From the News Channel 5 network, this is Career Talk, brought to you by Allegiant Staffing.
Welcome to Career Talk, the show that gives you information for your career direction. I'm your host, Matt Lowney, and Tom Landry is joining us. He's president with Allegiant Staffing, and I've always, we are a career advice show, so at its core, we are here to help people find employment. So I think it would be really interesting to maybe kind of walk through the entirety of the interview, all the way from initial point of contact with the company all the way through to I got a job and start on the first day, because there's lots of places people stumble along the way, don't they?
Oh yeah.
And they really maybe don't know they don't know what to do, so they do the best they can with what they have. So I thought it'd be helpful, we'll kind of take that piece by piece through the process. And I think that obviously begins with awareness of a company and networking in to get an opportunity with them. So how do you kind of how do you help coach somebody to that end?
Just to get into a company, there's so many medias available today that everybody's advertising everywhere. So how do you sort the real opportunities to somebody that's just fishing? Yeah, again, it comes down to local knowledge, word of mouth. If you have an idea that you wanted to work for a company, you got that from somewhere. So where did it come from? Was it a friend, a relative that might work at that company? Now it's a matter of finding the right person. Who do I talk to? Typically you get sent to human resources, and that's where the whole process starts. Right. But if you happen to know somebody within the company that you could get a name that could reference, that really helps push you to the head of the line, because now you're referencing somebody who might, after you leave, they can give you a reference on yourself, because the human resource director is no different than anybody else. They're trying to figure out who you are. There's no real magic to it. They got to trust their instincts. So the more you can know about the place you really want to work, the better your chances of getting involved and getting opportunities. And
one of the things through this show, obviously, you get to interface with a lot of people out there looking for a job. And I think what's really interesting to me is you hear about this black hole. I've applied, and one of the worst things I hate to hear somebody says, well, how's your job search going? Well, I spent all day applying to jobs, and nothing happened. And then that momentum builds to frustration. And all too often it's because they spend all of their time just cranking through applications and aren't being thoughtful around who do I know, how do I get there, how do I get in front of somebody. Because I'm the guy that works in recruiting, and you better believe if a VP comes in the hall and says, you need to talk to Tom, who am I going to call over the other 25 people that have applied? I'm going to pick up the phone and call Tom. So now that I've got somebody, I've made a point of contact, hopefully established some kind of rapport. You do need to have a resume in this, and I think what amazes me, how many people still don't have resumes. I haven't figured that out, but what are you looking for, how long? It's all that kind of traditional stuff people always still fumble over. Is what about the resume?
The biggest thing I could advise anybody in a resume is tell the truth. Because lies are so easy to spot. Yes, you want to expand on what you can do and your skill sets, and you think the positive characteristics, but keep it very easy to read. 2 pages. The biggest thing is don't have gaps. Explain gaps. Show consistency. Somebody who's young might not have anything but college, high school, and the first 2 or 3 jobs after that. That's okay. That's what I want to know. I want to know what you've done other than just stay at home. If you're older, and I don't need to go back to college if you're 50.
That's right.
What have you done for the last 10 years?
So now, and I do actually have a topic here to ask about being overqualified and this kind of sense of age discrimination, so we'll get to that. But I think too many people, in an effort to look at their resume as a marketing tool, get a little creative, and then creative leads to, well, that's not particularly true. And you'd mentioned where I see a lot of it myself, which is around gaps in employment. So often they try to fill that gap with, they'll have Matt Lowney Consulting. Well, which really is nothing. That's better than saying, well, sit at home and it took me 6 months to find a job. How do you talk about that on a resume? How do you say, well, I took 6 months to find a job and the economy was tough? I mean, how do they articulate that on their resume?
And over the last couple of years, that's become more and more the truth. It's not an issue of, somebody lying or trying to hide anything. Honesty, to me, and
That's
to
right.
my recruiters is always the best policy.
Right.
If prior to your last job you showed constant, steady employment for 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden there's this gap, and on that gap is specifically said, especially if the prior job laid off due to cutbacks or whatever, there's a reason,
Yeah.
I can understand that.
And you like people to explain their reasons on their resume, right? That's one thing I think a lot of people they feel like, well, if they won't ask, I won't tell, and it'll be okay.
Right.
And the other thing I see a lot of is women who stayed at home, or men, but mostly women who stayed at home with their children, and they were out of the employment game for 8 years, 10 years, and they just don't mention on their resume. There'll be an experience in the 90s, and they'll be like 2010, and there's this odd decade, that's missing. How do they address that? I mean, maybe it's just a long-form version of unemployment, I guess. But
well, I think it comes down to honesty, and I respect people who have done that.
That's right. And I think
my mom did that.
That's right. And I would like people to write that.
Yeah, she gave up her career to have me and my sisters, and when we were all old enough, she went back to work. Well, hers was a lot longer than 10.
That's right.
But she went back to work and retired again. I mean, it was one of those things of an employer's today's market. It's so hard to find people who just want to show up every day.
That's right.
That if you're honest with them, they're going to appreciate the honesty, and especially if it's something that's honorable. As I stayed at home to take care of my family, I'm not going to fault you for that.
That's right. And I think a lot of, unfortunately, what I think is that people, women particularly in that, want to kind of explain around it, as opposed to kind of look at it and go, hey, that's real work. I mean, staying home with 3 kids is not something I want to do every day.
Me either.
So we're going to need to take a quick break. After that, we're going to kind of talk a little about cover letters and then actually how to kind of go about applying for positions. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.